Imagine waking up in a world where you are no longer a person, just a number. Your name, your past, your dreams, erased in an instant. You are herded into a place where survival is not a matter of strength or intelligence, but sheer, merciless chance. The air is thick with despair, the walls echo with the cries of the broken, and every day people vanish, knowing they will never return. Most would surrender to such horror, their spirit crushed under the weight of suffering. But one man refused. Not only did he endure, he discovered something so profound, so deeply human, that it would change the way we understand life itself. That man was Viktor Frankl. In the depths of a Nazi concentration camp, where hope was a flickering candle in an endless storm, Frankl uncovered a truth that defied the darkness, a truth that turned suffering into strength. When everything was taken from him, he found the one thing that no prison, no brutality could ever steal. And what if I told you? His discovery could be the missing piece in your own life. Frankl did not just survive, he emerged with a philosophy that has guided millions through their hardest moments. A philosophy that might hold the answer to the struggles you face today. This is the story of a man who cracked the code to life's meaning, and by the end of this video, you will understand how his secret can transform yours. Long before Viktor Frankl became the man who would change the way we understand suffering, he was just a boy growing up in early 20th century Vienna, a city bursting with intellectual energy. It was a time when Freud was revolutionizing psychology, when coffeehouse debates raged about philosophy, art, and the meaning of life. And in the midst of it all was a young Viktor, curious, observant, and restless. Born in 1905 to a modest Jewish family, Frankl's fascination with the human mind began early. While most children were lost in games, Frankl was lost in thought. He questioned everything: why people acted the way they did, why some crumbled under adversity while others fought through it, and above all, what gave life meaning. By the time he was a teenager, these were not just idle musings. Frankl was drawn to both psychology and philosophy, but for him, these subjects were not abstract. They were personal, urgent, and deeply human. Vienna, like the rest of Europe, was still reeling from the devastation of World War I. Cities were shattered, economies collapsed, and an entire generation was left disillusioned. For many young people, life felt pointless. Depression and suicide rates were rising, and Vienna's youth were losing themselves in despair. Frankl saw this crisis firsthand in his classmates, his neighbors, the very streets he walked every day. And he could not ignore it. So, while most teenagers were worried about their grades or their social lives, Frankl was asking a far bigger question. What keeps people from giving up on life? Determined to find answers, Frankl pursued medicine, specializing in neurology and psychiatry. But from the start, he was different from other students. While his peers studied human behavior like scientists dissecting specimens, Frankl wanted to understand people, not just their brains, but their souls. By his early 20s, he was already helping suicidal students. Unlike traditional therapists who focused on past traumas or unconscious desires, Frankl took a radical approach. He helped people find a reason to live. His method was simple, yet profound. When someone came to him on the verge of ending their life, he would not just analyze their pain. Instead, he would ask, "What is something you still want to do? What makes life, even in its suffering, worth holding on to?" For one patient, it was a dream of becoming a writer. For another, it was a love they had not yet confessed. And for some, it was the simple thought that their existence, no matter how painful, still mattered to someone, somewhere. Through these conversations, Frankl saw a pattern. People who had a purpose, even a small one, could withstand incredible suffering. It was a belief that would one day shape his greatest work. Just as Frankl was beginning to make an impact, the world changed once again. The 1930s saw the rise of Nazi ideology, spreading fear and division. Jewish intellectuals like Frankl saw the walls closing in. By the time Germany annexed Austria in 1938, life had already grown dangerous. Frankl had a choice. He could flee to America, where he had an offer to continue his research, or he could stay in Vienna with his family, his people, and his patients. In the end, he chose to stay. And that decision would lead him down a path few could have imagined, a path that would test everything he believed about meaning, suffering, and the human spirit. In 1942, Viktor Frankl's life changed forever. The knock came suddenly, No warning, no time to prepare. Armed soldiers arrived, barking orders. He barely had a moment to grab a few belongings before he, along with his wife, parents, and brother, were herded onto a train bound for hell. The destination? Theresienstadt, a Nazi concentration camp. For weeks they were crammed into a cattle car, suffocating in the stench of sweat, urine, and death. The journey itself was a form of psychological torture. No food, no water, no certainty of what awaited them. Then, the train screeched to a halt. Doors were flung open. Brutal commands rang through the air. Raus! Schnell! Out! Quickly! And just like that, his old life was over. Frankl, a respected doctor and scholar, was now nothing more than a prisoner, a number. His medical degree, his years of work, his identity were all meaningless here. Within months, his father died of starvation. His mother and brother were sent to the gas chambers, murdered in the name of a twisted ideology. His wife, Tilly, was transferred to another camp. He would never see her again. All around him, death was constant. People collapsed from exhaustion, disease, or sheer hopelessness. Those who could no longer work were marched to the gas chambers. Others, desperate to escape the torment, flung themselves onto electric fences, a quicker, less agonizing end. Every morning, the prisoners would rise, half dead, hollow-eyed, starving, to the sound of guards barking orders. The daily routine was simple: slave labor, beatings, starvation, cold, terror, repeat. It was a world designed to break the human spirit, and for most, it did. But Frankl began to notice something. Not everyone gave up. Some, against all logic, kept going. Despite the suffering, despite the hopelessness, they clung to life with an unshakable force. But why? Frankl, the psychiatrist, became Frankl, the observer. This camp, this nightmare, became his ultimate psychological experiment, one he never wanted to conduct, but one that could reveal the truth about human resilience. Through exhaustion and hunger, he studied the prisoners. He saw that those who had nothing left to live for deteriorated fast. They became shells of themselves. Their eyes, once filled with fear or resistance, turned dull, lifeless. They stopped eating, stopped moving, stopped caring. And, in a place like Auschwitz, that meant death was imminent. But those who had even the smallest shred of purpose, they were different. Frankl saw an elderly man endure the freezing cold because he dreamed of reuniting with his daughter. He met a young artist who whispered about the paintings he would create if he survived. And then there was the scientist. One evening, Frankl walked beside a man who had fallen into despair. The scientist admitted that he had given up all hope, convinced there was no reason left to fight for survival. Frankl didn't try to comfort him with empty words. Instead, he asked, "What if there is still something waiting for you after this?" The scientist barely responded. Frankl pressed on. "Your work. The research you haven't finished, the books you haven't written. Who else can complete them?" A spark flickered in the man's eyes. In that moment, something shifted. The scientist straightened his posture as if reclaiming something long buried. He had a reason to survive. Frankl saw this again and again. Those who had a why could endure almost any how. Through all the horror, Frankl realized something profound, something that would define the rest of his life. The Nazis could take everything from them, family, possessions, dignity, but they couldn't take one thing, the ability to choose their response. Even in suffering, a man could decide, would he let the pain crush him, or would he use it to create meaning? For Frankl, this was not just a theory, it was survival. He imagined himself standing in a university lecture hall, sharing his discoveries with students. He pictured himself writing a book about what he had learned. That vision, that purpose, kept him alive. Through disease, starvation, and brutality, he clung to a single truth. Suffering in itself is meaningless. But the moment we give it meaning, it becomes bearable. And that, in the darkest chapter of his life, was the belief that saved him. When Viktor Frankl walked out of Auschwitz, he had no family, no home, and no certainty about what lay ahead. But he carried something else, something no prison, no tormentor, no tragedy could take from him, an unshakable realization. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. That single truth had kept him alive, Now, he was determined to share it with the world. From survival to discovery, Frankl returned to Vienna, the city of his birth. But it was no longer the Vienna he had known. The war had left it scarred, haunted by loss. Streets once filled with music and philosophy were now silent. His parents were gone. His brother was gone. His wife was gone. Most people would have collapsed under the weight of such grief. But Frankl had spent years in the most hellish conditions imaginable, watching firsthand who survived and who did not. He saw that survival was not about physical strength or intelligence. It was about having a reason to go on. Now, faced with his own suffering, he had a choice: sink into despair, or transform his pain into purpose. And so, instead of giving up, he sat down to write. In just 9 days, he poured his experiences and insights onto paper. That book, Man's Search for Meaning, would go on to change the world. Frankl's greatest contribution to psychology came from a radical idea. The primary human drive is not pleasure, as Freud claimed, or power, as Adler argued, but meaning. And from this idea, he developed logotherapy, a revolutionary approach to mental health and resilience. Unlike traditional therapy, which often focused on past trauma, logotherapy was future-focused. Instead of asking, "What do you expect from life?" Frankl urged people to ask, "What does life expect from you?" This shift in perspective was profound. It forced people out of self-pity and into responsibility. According to logotherapy, people could discover meaning through 3 key paths: through work, creating something valuable, or engaging in meaningful tasks. Frankl believed that dedicating oneself to a mission, a craft, or a cause could give life purpose. Even in Auschwitz, he saw prisoners who found strength in unfinished projects, a doctor dreaming of returning to his patients, a writer imagining the books he had yet to write, through love, experiencing deep connections with others. Frankl often spoke of how the thought of his wife, Tilly, sustained him in the camps. Even though he didn't know if she was alive, his love for her kept him going. Love, he realized, could transcend suffering and even death. Through suffering, transforming pain into personal growth and resilience. This was the most radical and controversial idea. Most people saw suffering as meaningless, but Frankl argued that if a person could find purpose in their pain, they could endure anything. He often told the story of a grieving man who came to him, devastated by the loss of his wife. Instead of offering comfort, Frankl asked, "If you had died first, how would your wife have felt?" The man replied, "She would have suffered terribly." Frankl nodded. "Then by living, you have spared her that suffering. Your pain now is the price you pay to protect her from that grief." The man left the session in silence, but with a newfound sense of meaning in his pain. Logotherapy was not about dwelling on the past. It was about taking responsibility for the present and future. Frankl once treated a man who had lost all hope. The patient was deeply depressed and suicidal, convinced his life had no value. Instead of asking him about his childhood, Frankl asked one simple question: "Why haven't you killed yourself yet?" The man was startled, but then he thought about it, and he realized he still cared about his family. That single realization gave him a reason to live. This was logotherapy in action, helping people shift their perspective from suffering to significance. Why logotherapy still matters. Today, Frankl's ideas weren't just about surviving concentration camps. They were about surviving life. We all face suffering, loss, failure, uncertainty. And in those moments, the instinct is to ask, "Why is this happening to me?" But Frankl taught us to ask something different. What can I do with this suffering? How can I turn this into something meaningful? That shift changes everything. His work went on to influence millions, from patients battling depression to athletes pushing their limits, from grieving families to people simply searching for purpose. His message was simple, yet powerful. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. And in that response lies the key to meaning and to life itself. Viktor Frankl did not just teach people how to survive, he taught them how to live. He had seen human beings endure unthinkable suffering. He had watched prisoners in Auschwitz hold on to hope while everything around them crumbled. And after the war, he saw countless others, patients in deep depression, people trapped in grief, desperately searching for a reason to go on. Frankl's message was clear: suffering is inevitable, but meaning is always within your reach. In today's world, we are told that happiness is the goal. The modern world sells us the idea that if we just get the right job, find the right partner, buy the right things, then we will finally be happy. But Frankl rejected this idea. He argued that chasing happiness directly often leads to emptiness, not fulfillment. Happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue. In other words, if you make happiness your goal, you'll always feel like something is missing. But if you pursue meaning, happiness will follow as a byproduct. Frankl's greatest insight, the one that transformed lives, was this: you may not control what happens to you, but you always control how you respond. This idea wasn't just theoretical. It was born from his own suffering. In the concentration camps, everything had been taken from him: his family, his career, his freedom. But there was one thing the Nazis could never take away: his ability to choose his attitude. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose. In our choice lies our growth and our freedom. This is the ultimate human freedom, the power to decide how we will face life, no matter how cruel or unfair it may be. Some of the most remarkable people in history, the ones who have left an impact, who have inspired generations, are those who found meaning in their suffering. Frankl saw this firsthand. After the war, he worked with terminally ill patients, people who knew they had limited time left. But instead of falling into despair, some of them found deep purpose in their final days. One patient, a man facing certain death, told Frankl, "Doctor, I cannot avoid dying, but I can ensure that I die with dignity." This shift in perspective, from helplessness to purpose, was life-changing. Instead of focusing on what they had lost, these patients focused on what they could still give. And that, according to Frankl, is the key to a meaningful life. Frankl's philosophy directly contradicts the modern obsession with comfort and ease. Today we seek effortless joy, instant gratification, and a life free from hardship. But Frankl's message was different. A meaningful life is not necessarily an easy life. He believed that true fulfillment comes from struggle, sacrifice, and responsibility. It comes from being part of something larger than yourself. Consider a parent staying up all night with a sick child. Not easy, but deeply meaningful. An artist pushing through creative struggle to complete their masterpiece. Not easy, but deeply meaningful. A person fighting for a cause they believe in, even when the odds are against them. Not easy, but deeply meaningful. The greatest moments of our lives often come from the things that required effort, resilience, and even suffering. How to apply Frankl's wisdom to your own life. Frankl's insights are not just for Holocaust survivors or people facing life-threatening illness. They apply to all of us. If you are feeling lost, if you are struggling to find purpose, ask yourself 3 key questions. What work can I dedicate myself to? Meaning often comes from creating, contributing, or striving towards something greater. What is something you can build, develop, or give to the world? Who do I love, and who depends on me? Meaning is found in relationships, not isolation. Who in your life needs you? Who do you care about deeply? How can I transform my suffering into something meaningful? Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, how can I use this experience to grow, to help others, or to build something valuable? The legacy of Viktor Frankl. Frankl's teachings have transformed millions of lives, from trauma survivors to business leaders, from struggling students to world-renowned thinkers. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, is still one of the most widely read and respected works in psychology. His philosophy has been used to help people battling depression find hope, soldiers returning from war rediscover purpose, athletes, artists, and entrepreneurs push through adversity to achieve greatness. His core message remains as powerful today as it was decades ago. Life is not about avoiding suffering. Life is about finding something worth suffering for. And when you do, you won't just survive, you will thrive. Viktor Frankl's ideas are not just history. They are a roadmap for anyone struggling to find meaning in their own life. You don't have to endure a concentration camp to experience suffering. You don't have to lose everything to feel lost. At some point, we all face moments of despair, uncertainty, and pain. Maybe it's a career setback. Maybe it's the loss of someone you love. Maybe it's waking up every morning with the quiet feeling that something is missing. Frankl's philosophy is not just about surviving hardship. It's about transforming it. Here's how you can apply his wisdom to your own life. Pain is inevitable. The question is, what will you do with it? Most people, when they suffer, ask, why is this happening to me? But Frankl teaches us to ask a different question. How can this shape me? Imagine two people who lose their jobs. One falls into despair, convinced they are a failure. The other uses it as a wake-up call, an opportunity to pursue work they truly care about. Same event, two different responses. Suffering in itself is meaningless, but the meaning we assign to it changes everything. Frankl saw this firsthand. In the camps, those who found meaning in their suffering, whether through faith, love, or a sense of purpose, were more likely to survive. Think of someone like Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison, but instead of letting it break him, he used that time to strengthen his mind and spirit. When he was finally freed, he did not seek revenge. He sought reconciliation, because he had transformed his suffering into something greater. So, ask yourself, what struggle in your life could shape you into a stronger person? How can you turn your pain into wisdom, resilience, or even a way to help others? When you stop seeing suffering as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something that can transform you, everything changes. Most of us are taught that happiness is the goal. We chase it through success, money, relationships, or pleasure, only to find that, somehow, it always slips through our fingers. Frankl argued that happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. Happiness is the unintended side effect of living a meaningful life. In other words, don't chase happiness. Chase meaning. Happiness will follow. But what does meaning actually mean? Frankl identified three main ways we can create meaning in our lives. A. Through work, creating something of value. When you dedicate yourself to something bigger than yourself, a project, a mission, a craft, you create meaning. It's why artists push through creative struggle. It's why people who love their work often feel energized rather than drained. It's why the most fulfilled people aren't those chasing wealth, but those pursuing impact. B. Through love, deep connections with others. Frankl believed that love is one of the greatest sources of meaning. Loving deeply, whether it's a partner, a child, or even a cause, gives us a reason to wake up in the morning. Frankl himself survived Auschwitz by holding on to the love he had for his wife, even when he didn't know if she was still alive. That love gave him strength. C. Through suffering, turning pain into growth. We all experience pain, but pain itself isn't what breaks us. It's the belief that it has no purpose. When we see suffering as an opportunity for growth, resilience, and even helping others, it becomes meaningful. Ask yourself, what work or mission could give your life deeper meaning? Who do you love deeply? And how can you strengthen that bond? How can your struggles be used for growth instead of despair? Perhaps Frankl's most powerful teaching is this: you may not control what happens to you, but you always control how you respond. This is what separates those who are broken by life from those who rise above it. In Auschwitz, Frankl saw two types of people: those who let the horror destroy their spirit, those who, even in the worst conditions, chose to remain human, to show kindness, to hold on to hope. The same applies to everyday life. You may not control a bad childhood, a failed relationship, a financial crisis, but you do control how you use your past as a weight or a lesson, how you show up for the people in your life, the choices you make moving forward. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything that happens. It means realizing that, no matter your past, you are not powerless. What choices am I making today that shape my future? Am I reacting to life, or am I actively shaping my path? What small action can I take right now to create meaning in my life? Frankl's teachings have helped millions of people, from trauma survivors to those facing everyday struggles. His philosophy is not just about enduring life's hardships, but about using them to create something meaningful. His core message is this: life is not about avoiding suffering. Life is about finding something worth suffering for. The next time you feel lost, remember, your suffering can shape you. Your purpose is found in meaning, not fleeting happiness. You always have the power to choose your response. This is how you not only survive, but thrive. And that is Frankl's greatest gift to the world. Viktor Frankl did not just survive the Holocaust. He emerged from it with a message that would change the world. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, has sold over 12 million copies, translated into dozens of languages, and has influenced generations of psychologists, leaders, and everyday people searching for purpose. It's not just a book, it's a lifeline. Soldiers facing the trauma of war have found hope in its pages. Terminally ill patients have drawn strength from its wisdom. Entrepreneurs, athletes, and world leaders have applied its lessons to overcome failure, adversity, and self-doubt. Frankl's message is timeless because suffering is timeless. No matter who you are, where you live, or what you believe, pain, loss, and struggle are part of life. But so is meaning, and Frankl's legacy is proof that meaning is always within our reach. Imagine this: you have lost everything. Your family, your home, your identity, gone. You are imprisoned in a place designed to strip you of your humanity. Most people would break. And yet, in the worst of circumstances, Viktor Frankl found something extraordinary. The realization that no one, not even the Nazis, could take away his ability to choose how he responded to suffering. He was beaten, starved, and forced to endure unimaginable horrors. But in his mind, he remained free. He chose to find purpose in his suffering. He chose to find meaning in his pain. And when he emerged from the concentration camps, he carried with him a truth so powerful that it would reshape the way we understand the human spirit. Frankl's story is proof that even in suffering there is wisdom. Even in darkness there is light. And even when everything is taken from us, we still have the power to choose our response. We may not be living through the horrors of Auschwitz, but suffering exists in every corner of modern life. The feeling of emptiness despite outward success, the struggle with anxiety, depression, or uncertainty about the future, the pain of losing someone we love, the quiet despair of waking up every day without a sense of purpose. We live in an age of comfort and convenience, yet more people feel lost than ever before. We have more freedom than at any point in history, yet many feel trapped in lives that lack meaning. Frankl's work remains revolutionary because it forces us to ask the one question that truly matters: what meaning will you give to your life? Your search for meaning begins now. So, I leave you with a challenge. Right now, in this moment, ask yourself, what struggle in my life could I turn into strength? What deeper purpose am I meant to fulfill? What choice can I make today that will add meaning to my existence? Because meaning is not something you passively wait for. It's something you create through your work, your love, your choices, and even your suffering. And when you find it, when you truly embrace it, nothing in this world can take it from you. That is the gift Viktor Frankl left us. The rest is up to you.